Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Physics of the Universe. We are continuing on with our weather and thermal heating unit. Today we'll be talking a little bit more about why cities like Seattle and Spokane are so very different in their climates. Now, this is really an extension of last time. You remember last time we were talking about what's called differential heating between ocean and land, when you have two different surfaces that have the ability to take in sunlight radiation, and how it turns that sunlight radiation into heat will really determine what the weather is like. So let's get going on this. Typically when I talk about regional temperature variations throughout the year, I like to talk about Seattle and Spokane. We're both in the same state. We're relatively close to each other. However, if we take a look at the weather in Seattle and Spokane, here's a typical picture of what Seattle would look like in the summer. I mean, it's kind of not much going on there. You see the Space Needle, or it might get hot. I mean, we might get really, really hot in the summer, but it doesn't really ever get really that hot in the summer. And here is a picture of Seattle in the winter. I think it's hard to tell, because a picture of Seattle in the summer and a picture of Seattle in the winter, really there's not going to be that much difference. The weather in Seattle doesn't really change that much. But let's compare that to summer in Spokane. So this is a picture of Spokane. If you've never been there before, it's an interesting city that has pockets of really epic beauty. They have a beautiful river that flows right through the middle, a waterfall right in the middle of town. It's really kind of cool. It does in the summer tend to get very hot. On average, the Spokane summers are much warmer than Seattle's. However, if we go to winter, there's a picture of Seattle in winter. Notice all the snow there. It can get very, very cold in the winter. In fact, on average, at the peak of winter, the temperature in Spokane is below freezing. So what's going on with that? So let's take a look at this graph. Here's a little graph right here. This graph is showing you that here is the average temperature. Now this is in Celsius, here's in Fahrenheit. The blue line is Spokane, Washington. So notice that the temperature in Spokane, Washington in January is below freezing on average, which means your average temperature, you might be above freezing one day, you might be negative 22 degrees Fahrenheit the next day. But on temperature, on average, the temperature is below freezing in Spokane. And then as a year goes on, here's February, March, April, May, we go all the way up to about, on average, 70 degrees. Now you think, okay, Mr. Lee, summer and 70 degrees is not that hot. It does not mean it can't get to be 110 degrees in Spokane. It just means you take all the rain days with all the sunshine days, on average, the temperature is going to be around 70 degrees. And then, of course, we go back to the winter months, August, September, October, and then we go to November and December, and we're back down to that just below freezing point. We compare that to Seattle. Seattle starts off at about 40, and our coldest days, on average, during the winter, is around 42 degrees. Sometimes we're a little bit warmer, sometimes we're a little bit cooler, but rarely, I mean, it's kind of rare we actually even get below freezing, whereas that's the average of Spokane. So in the wintertime, we are much, much warmer in Seattle than we are in Spokane. As the year progresses, notice that the difference between winter and summer, not really that much. It only gets to be about, on average during the summer, around 63, 64 degrees Fahrenheit. That's the average temperature in the summer. Once again, keep in mind those cold, rainy days versus the warm, sunny days. They kind of average out to be in the mid 60s. And then we go back down to December to well above freezing as our average temperature. So if you look at Spokane, the difference between Spokane and Seattle is quite different. It gets much colder in the winter in Spokane, and it gets much warmer in the summer. By the way, all you guys planning on going to Washington State University, that's in Pullman, Washington. That's about 70 miles south of Spokane. Kind of the same thing. During the winters, you're going to be dealing with very, very cold winter. During the summer, it's going to be a lot hotter than back here in Seattle. So what's the reason for that? Well, Spokane, here's a map of Washington right here. Spokane is right here on the border of Washington and Idaho. If we look at Seattle, we're right over here. And the big thing that's different is that Seattle is a lot closer to the ocean than Spokane is. And that's important because remember we talked about the ocean. The ocean has the ability to take in that solar radiation. And just like land takes in solar radiation, turns it into heat, and that's why you burn your feet at the beach, right? Well, the water's doing the same thing. But what happens is during the summertime, the land heats up so much faster than the water does because the water has the ability to mix and stir the cooler water from below and the warmer water from above. So the air above the water is going to be cooler than on land on a hot sunny day. Seeing as Seattle is right next to the ocean, those cool breezes come off of the ocean and keeps us cooler than the cities that are further inland in the United States. And then during the wintertime, well, all summer long, the sun has been heating up the ocean, heating up the ocean, heating up the ocean. The ocean has the ability to store that heat. Over in Spokane, land doesn't have the ability to store heat. And because it doesn't have the ability to store heat, then it gives it up very easily. So since you don't get very much sunlight during those winter months, there's nothing to heat the land up, so there's nothing to keep Spokane warm. But in Seattle, since it has the ability to move that heat around, all that heat that it's stored over the summer still kind of stays in those oceans, and it keeps us a little bit warmer than people at the same latitudes as we are. So Seattle, our climate doesn't change that much. We don't get too hot, we don't get too cold. We're always just about the right temperature. Well, for people who live in Seattle at the very least. And if you don't like extreme temperatures, Seattle's a great place to live. Strangely enough, another place that kind of jumps out at me is Southern California. San Diego in Southern California, everybody thinks that San Diego is an oppressively hot city, that it's in a desert, and everybody is about to burst into flames at any moment. Okay, a little bit of an exaggeration, but that's the concept. The people that have never been to San Diego, that's what they think of San Diego. That's actually not true. San Diego is a very, very nice city. San Diego is located, if we look at this is a map of California. Here's Southern California down here. San Diego is right on the border of Mexico and California. It's like the southernmost city in California. Has to be because it's touching the Mexican border. However, if you take a look at this chart right here, this green line right here represents the temperature differences over the year on average of San Diego. And you'll see that San Diego only reaches in the summer like on average a little over 70 degrees. Little over 70 degrees. This is Southern California. This is people who are getting more direct sunlight than us. This is an area that's known for sunshiny. And yet it only gets a little over 70 degrees. That's quite a big difference between the two. And there's a very good reason for that. The reason why is because San Diego is right here on the side of the ocean, and ocean winds are constantly blowing in. So once again, the ocean has the ability to keep San Diego at a kind of constant temperature. So the people who live in San Diego know that they're living in a little bit of a paradise, in that their temperature never really gets, unlike a lot of Southern California, doesn't get oppressively hot. And in the summertime, if you don't like things getting cold, it never gets cold in San Diego. It really stays within about 20 degrees difference between summer and winter. There's not a big change in temperature. Now, if we take a look at that and we compare that to another city nearby, there's a city in California that's about right here in this area called Bakersville. Bakersville, California can get very chilly during the winter. I don't want to say cold, not Spokane cold, but very chilly in the winter. But in the summer, its average temperatures are in the 90s. That means that it's not unusual for Bakersville to get not just over 100, but well over 100 degrees Fahrenheit. And they're just, within a short driving distance of each other. And that just has everything to do with that Bakersville is so much further inland than San Diego, and it doesn't get those cool ocean breezes. Even places like Los Angeles, if you're in Los Angeles by the coast, then you get kind of that cool ocean breeze. But as you go into Los Angeles, it actually gets warmer and warmer and warmer. So on a hot summer day, people go down to the coast to get away from the heat, because if you live on the other side of Los Angeles, it can be kind of oppressively hot. So that kind of explains kind of Southern California and how that works. And I want to show you this. This is a global climate map of the average temperatures all over the earth. And I want to talk about the American Midwest. This is the American Midwest through here, Minnesota, Iowa. And if you've ever paid attention to what goes on over there, places like Chicago or Des Moines or St. Louis and stuff like that, those places in the winter, they're likely to get a lot of snow. It's going to get very cold. Places like Minnesota and Chicago and Wisconsin get a lot of snow, sub-freezing temperatures. And you'll notice that in this area right here, that during the winter months, let's say it's going to get here's November, December, January, those blues mean that that's cold temperatures. But in the summer months, notice that that inland area is getting much, much warmer. But if you look over here in places like Seattle, here in Seattle, we're yellow. We're almost yellow throughout the year. We only go to like a little bit of orange during the hottest of the hottest summer months. But we're about the same temperature. And you can kind of sort of look all over the world and kind of see the same thing. Notice that there's not a big temperature difference in Japan except where it's inland. The Koreas all along here does not get that much difference. Place that compares to Seattle a lot is England. If you look at England, the temperature difference in England really not that much throughout the year. However, if you go inland, like this is the Siberia region of Russia, and that Siberian region gets very, very hot during the summer, but very, very, very cold during the winter. Now you'll notice that there's some discrepancies in this. You might notice that this part right here, you have this area right here that's getting very cold. Well, that's the Himalaya Mountains. Over here we have the Rocky Mountains. They seem like they're colder than the rest. But even in the Rocky Mountains during the summer months, it can get rather hot. Also notice by looking at this, I want you guys to notice something else, and this is something I'm going to be talking about in the next video. Notice how the temperatures around here kind of are regulated and are fairly the same throughout the year. I wish this map showed Hawaii. Hawaii doesn't hardly change at all. And notice up here in the northern hemisphere how it's much, much colder. There's actually some very good reasons why these are all happening, but that's going to happen in the next video. Thank you for watching.